Hello, my name is Bianca Winship, and this is my presentation of Cultural Aspects of Learning for the University of New England, EDU 747. To choose a culture for my Cultural Aspects of Learning presentation, I sought out Portland Public Schools' largest immigrant population. 33% of Portland students are immigrants, and over 60 languages are spoken, with the top most common being, in order, Somali, Arabic, Spanish, French, Portuguese, Kirundi, Vietnamese, Khmer, Kinyarwanda, and Acholi. Based on this information, I have chosen to study the Somali culture, being our largest population of immigrant families. I have had the pleasure of teaching several students and families who are Somali, and this research assignment has brought new light to better understanding those and future students and families. While researching Somalia's history and implications for instruction for Somali students in U.S. schools, I found that Somali culture has a rich oral history, similar to Aboriginal cultures, where stories are shared down from generation to generation. Family and community are paramount in Somali culture. I can recall several students that love to share their experiences using rich vocabulary and strong composition. While researching Somalia's education system, I found that Somalia's basic social services are in disarray due to years of civil unrest. Since the 1990s, Somali families have been immigrating to the U.S. and other countries to seek refuge. As a result, the schools in Somalia have insufficient resources and a lack of qualified teachers. USAID states that the education deficit in Somalia is one of the most acute in the world. Of the total 4.7 million school-aged population, 972,000 children, or 1 out of every 5 Somali student-aged children, are displaced. Families are required to pay for school services, so this further reduces the number of students that attend school. Somalia is predominantly Muslim. Students traditionally attend additional schooling to learn classical Arabic text and speech to read and study the Quran. Several of my students attended programming after the school day to learn to read Arabic and the Quran, and for many students this was difficult due to the long hours. Wallach and Sullivan state that Somali family structure reflects Islamic values, so the families are largely patriarchal, although Somali communities typically operate democratically. Moving to the United States has had other implications for Somali families. Based on Wallach and Sullivan's work, Somalis report less religious persecution in the United States than elsewhere, but adolescents frequently reported experiencing race-based discrimination, which was associated with an increase of mental health problems. This has cultural implications in Somali communities. In Somali culture, mental health is believed to have a metaphysical basis caused by God or evil spirits. The Somali community often regards mental illness as something shameful to be handled within the community, so affected youth may be expected to seek support from family members and other Somalis, or hidden entirely rather than mental health professionals. U.S. schools require immigrants to assimilate into American culture, and even though we've made headway with respecting our students' and families' cultural differences, there are other cultural implications that teachers and staff should be aware of to avoid or alienate Somali students and families. Bassford states that male-to-female physical contact, pointing one's shoe or foot sole at another, or making the come here gesture with one's index finger, giving a thumbs up, and even winking at the opposite sex is offensive in Somali culture. Because Somalia is predominantly Muslim, there are cultural customs to consider regarding dress and food. Females typically wear long dresses and a hijab. Bassford reports that Somali parents and girls often report discomfort with the casual mingling of similarities in dress between males and females in school. Islamic rule also designates forbidden food, or halal and haram foods. Halal are meats that have been butchered according to specific Muslim practices. Somali families put a lot of trust in teachers based on Somali culture sharing the same cultural beliefs. This may result in less parent involvement in school, but it does not mean that Somali parents do not value their child's education. While researching the Somali culture, I was surprised by the compounding effect of race and religious discrimination for Somali families. The implications of being displaced from your homeland and then thrust into a culture that expects you to assimilate to their customs must be overwhelmingly challenging. I have more appreciation in Portland's decision to invest more professional development time to teach equity as part of the Portland Promise, to close the gap in inequality. Because Somali families largely practice the Muslim faith, it's prudent to consider how gender dynamics may play a role in student behavior. If male-female interaction, and more accurately contact, is frowned upon in Somali culture, then teachers should make instructional decisions based on this sensitivity. The groupings of students and even morning meeting or community building activities that include different gestures of hand-holding, high fives, etc. may be uncomfortable for Muslim students. Allowing students more choice to participate that respects their cultural practices would allow for deeper engagement and a sense of belonging. For example, students could wave as a choice in greeting peers during morning meeting. Teachers should also be mindful of avoiding physical contact with students of the opposite gender. Somali culture has a strong oral history and practice, so many students interact more verbally. This may be construed as being disruptive to the learning environment. Expectations around classroom discourse and work times should be explicitly explained and allow for time to talk. Cooperative and collaborative groups should support cultural considerations. Content should also be a factor in supporting Somali students. While selecting instructional content, educators can better support these students when they understand their experiences and cultural background. Teachers may foster Somali students' engagement by infusing familiar topics into their lessons and by connecting curriculum to their interests and experiences. This year, my 3rd and 4th grade teachers and I created a project where students studied immigrant families and created a mural based on their experiences coming to Portland and the United States. This is an example of how immigrant families and students can offer their own experiences embedded into the content of studying immigration. Explicit instruction should also be given around property. Because Somali culture is largely communal, property is treated as such. Considerations can also be made by having communal supplies and resources, but expectations around teacher and students' personal belonging should be discussed. Sensitivity around the Muslim culture should also be considered. For example, students may be fasting for Eid, so schools should have spaces for students to participate in alternative activities during lunch and recess to respect their faith. This concludes my cultural aspects of learning presentation. I look forward to your feedback. Thank you.